Hi, today we're looking at the Moog DFAM. We live in an age of fantastic music-making machines. We've never had it so good. There have never been more interesting things that are more affordable, more analog, and more cool than we have in this year of our Lord. And I mention that because I think that the Moog DFAM is possibly one of the most interesting analog synthesizer products that has been released in decades. And I really, truly mean that, and I want to try and explain why. Because you know Moog, who are an amazing American company who make classic analog synthesizers using circuits of yesteryear, the filters, the oscillators, the mixers, the amplifier designs that have made their sound so famous and successful. They make these really beautiful, gorgeous sounding, simple analog synthesizers that anyone can get fabulous, stunning results from and always sound amazing, always make your tunes sound better, and so forth. And Moog seem to skirt this line of past and future. They make things that are both based in the past and with a nod to what is possible in the modern era. And in the analog realm, we've seen Moog reissue their modular synthesizers. And from those modular synthesizers, all manner of strange, impossible sounds are capable of being generated. That's where you can take that traditional linear architecture that was first pioneered in the Mini Moog, when the Mini Moog set the template of what a subtractive synthesizer actually was, but their modular synthesizers allow you to break it. And I mention this because it relates to the DFAM, because what's amazing about the DFAM is how it takes those traditional building blocks, oscillators, filters, envelope generators, VCAs, and sequencers, and it just mashes them together in a completely new structure. And what you may be forgiven for not realizing is that you cannot do what a DFAM does on a subtractive synthesizer that you may already own, or at least I think it's very unlikely, because what's happening behind a panel really is the product of a modular synthesizer. It's the kind of thing that you would do on a modular synth, and that would be impossible to do in a traditional oscillators, mixer, filter, output scenario. You just can't do what a DFAM does. And what is a DFAM? Well, I'll tell you what it isn't. It's not a drum machine. And if you were thinking of buying a drum machine and you bought a DFAM, you might be sorely disappointed. And I say you might because the DFAM is absolutely capable of drum machine-like things. It's capable of making murderous kick drums, snares, hats, toms, and all manner of blips, bleeps, squawks, and strange other in-betweeny sounds as well. And it has a trigger button so you can fire those sounds off as one-shots, and you could load them into a sampler. You can absolutely build an amazing synthesized drum kit using the DFAM as your sculpting tool to actually make the samples that you would then use elsewhere. But what's absolutely nuts about the DFAM is when you just let it run and play. Because what we're going to look at in this video, and what you've heard a taste of, is that the DFAM truly offers something new. It's something else. And I would say that it is a perfect example of what's great about modular synthesizers. When you mess around with those things, you start to get stuff where you're making things that are half drums, half bass, half lead, that are a mashup of all three things, where suddenly the modular synthesizer is spitting out this kind of ever instantly evolving thing that on one step is a kick, on one step is a kind of snare, and then it kind of does a hat, then it kind of does another noise, and then it does a bass note, and it's pitched and it's noisy as well. So it's this interplay between pitched and noisy information where you're able to just make these amazing, absolutely dance floor murder, techno, electro, lead tone lines. And it's the most damn fun thing that you can have to play around with. So a DFAM in many ways is really a lead instrument, I would say. Very different to the idea of a drum machine. And actually what I would say is the DFAM will pair beautifully with a traditional drum machine, giving you this foundational groove. And then the DFAM would almost make everything else that you could possibly need, you know, leads, strange sounds, rhythms and textures and different things that would complement that classic drum machine rolling around in the background. And then to it, you can add things like delay to really pad and rhythm it out and just fill out the sound space in stereo. Anyway, my point is simply, it's not a drum machine, it's a hybrid instrument, and it's also a completely unique arrangement of things. I'm very excited. I think it's actually one of the best things they've ever made. So let's actually work out how it works. So when you get a DFAM, you get all of these wonderful little presets. You basically get these little patch sheets, which you can just literally lay on top of the DFAM and follow in order to get you started. And I would highly recommend that when you get one of these things, you do that, because it will help you understand what's going on. For example, if I was to wire this up, you can see that there are little orange spots that are telling you where to put the knob settings. So you literally just put all the knob settings. I've actually already done this. However, what I've not done is wired the cables. So I have to wire this to this, and I wire this one to here. And if I hit play, you should hear something like this. Nice. So what's happening here is that the DFAM is moving from kick drum to snare sound on a per step basis. Just to be very clear, there isn't some kind of hidden trickery. There is only one machine here making the sound coming out of one cable. Super cool. So it's doing both a kick drum and a snare drum on a per step basis, which is kind of nuts. How does one voice do this? And it's because it's this one super malleable voice. Now, I'll actually break down what's inside this thing so that hopefully we can try and understand it. If I just hit trigger, this is the kind of one-shot button. If you were, by the way, if you were going to sample it, you can just do this. So in this thing, you've got two Moog oscillators, VCO1 and VCO2. And these track 1 volt per octave. You do have inputs on the patch bay here to control the oscillators individually, VCO1 CV, VCO2 CV. So these can act as two Moog oscillators that if you have a modular synthesizer, you can play them elsewhere. Do you see what I mean? As in, you've got two oscillators made by Moog. Pretty damn sweet. And then these, plus white noise, feed into a little mixer here. So two oscillators plus white noise into a mixer. And then those go through a Moog filter, which is resonant. Of course, this is the ladder filter. And then at the end of it, you've got a VCA. Well, actually, there's quite a few VCAs in this thing, but what's called VCA is just the volume. So two oscillators, a white noise generator, going into a filter, and then we've got a volume decay. Now, I've slightly skipped over a few things, and now we're going to go back and explain more about what's happening here. Because really, the trick with the DFAM is what happens with these two sequences. So there's actually two 8-step analog sequences in here, which we can run. at crazy rates because they are analog, so they can actually go up to audio rates and do all manner of strange things. Ooh. And so what we can actually do is if I put the velocity up to full on all of these, I can put in melodies using the pitch sequencer. So I can say, so what's happening here is I'm just using this top pitch sequencer, and by adjusting this dial, I've told that pitch sequencer to control the pitch of both oscillators at the same time. And then the trick is there are 3 envelope generators. There was the one that we looked at which controls the volume. There's actually another one which controls the filter, so it can make the filter go plucky or long. And I've got an amount control for that. And then there's another one as well here, which controls the VCOs. And you have to apply it with these 2 knobs here. So suddenly, I'm now applying a filter envelope and a VCO pitch envelope and a amplification of volume envelope as well. Starting to get a bit more drummy, and if I take these away as I zero them, because I can apply them negatively, by the way, whoa, 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 whoa. Or I can do positively on one and negatively on the other. So suddenly this is interesting. I'm actually getting sequences out of this thing. It's a sequencer, it's a voice as well. It's not a drum machine, except it can be a drum machine, but we'll get to that. And so I can do things like hard sync the oscillators to each other. That basically means that VCO2 is synced to VCO1. And as I adjust VCO2, the pitch kind of stays the same, but I get different tones. Interesting, kind of metallic. Things. And you've kind of got to have the pitch of VCO2 above the pitch of VCO1 for it to do stuff. But suddenly there's these sounds that are possible in there. I can turn that off. And then I can frequency modulate the oscillators with each other. I can have the pitch of VCO1 modulate VCO2. Which is pretty sweet. So, despite it being just 2 oscillators going into a filter with a volume decay, a filter decay, and an oscillator decay, as it were, you've suddenly got loads of different tones that are possible within that scope. All of these things can be kind of, if they're in different settings, will cause different sounds. And you can sort of FM while you're hard syncing, and you can apply VCO1 mod. And you can just tinker around. And remember, we had white noise as well. I can turn this down, turn the oscillators down. By the way, I have different wave shapes for the oscillators as well, both square, which is what I was playing with, but also a triangle, which is sort of softer and subbier. So very powerful. Suddenly we've got all manner of pitched, funky sequences possible with this ability to FM, hard sync, and apply these 3 envelope generators. Here, here, and here in interesting ways. You can never change the attack portion. They start immediately, but you can change the decay portion, how they fall away. So that it's just like an ADSR, if you're familiar with that, but it's just an AR, effectively. Attack is set to a hard on, and then the release, decay, is the thing that you're adjusting with these 3 dials. Cool. But obviously that's not the whole point. That was only really the tip of the iceberg, because we've then got this velocity sequencer. So what does that do? Well, okay, so that's actually what's the most exciting thing about here, because you remember these 3 envelopes? Well, what the velocity lane is doing is it's controlling how strongly those 3 envelopes are going to their destinations. So it literally says, in fact, if you're a modular geek, there are in fact 3 VCAs in the path here, and the velocity lane controls the VCAs. Sort of layman's terms, what it means is literally it's just controlling how much they're going to their destinations. And what it means is as you turn down the velocities on a per step basis, you get dynamic effects as they don't act fully or do act fully, and then everything else is kind of interacting. It creates this dynamism. And what's really, really cool is then where the patch bay comes into play, because having these 2 8-step sequences makes for very powerful per step modulation possibilities. Because the outputs of the sequences are available to you, this velocity here is the output of this sequencer, and pitch is the output of this sequencer. And you'll see in a number of the patches, quite often the person designing the patch has used those sequencers and sent them to control the amount knobs, because you can modulate these and do things so that on a per step basis, the knob is being turned by the sequencer, which just leads to really interesting things, because you're saying that on this step, all the knobs are going to be in one setting. On another step, they're all going to be in another setting. And it leads to this really interesting dynamic stuff. So let's play this patch. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the velocity sequencer all the way up. So the patch will sound wrong. Whoa. So this is very intense. But I've got the velocity sequencers all the way up, and you see I need to turn them down. Listen to what happens when I turn them down. Yeah. Good things happen. Good things happen when you turn them down. What's interesting to note with this patch is what whoever designed this has done. They've used the pitch sequencer here to control the noise VCF mod knob. Now, we didn't actually look at this before. Oh. Ow. Oh my God. Listen to that. Sounds so good. But I want to illustrate what that's doing, basically. So the noise VCF mod dial, what that's doing is it's using the noise, the white noise, the sh, as a modulation source. It actually sends the white noise to control the cutoff knob. And what it has the effect of doing is making it go all furry and fuzzy. So if I turn the white noise down, you'll just hear the tone. And as I turn up the mod, I'll unplug this, that might help. Here it goes fluffy. It's nice, it adds sort of texture and fur, which is different to just putting white noise in pre-filter. That makes it go Tommy, but if you do this, it goes furry. But what this is doing is by wiring this to the VCF mod, it's using the pitch sequencer in a dual purpose. The pitch sequencer is going to control both the oscillators and control this knob for us. So it's doing the fur on a per step basis whilst also controlling the pitch. Thanks. And you can extend that principle out. You can use the pitch sequencers and the velocity sequencers to control all manner of things. Ow. Doesn't sound half bad without that cabling, actually, I have to say. Pretty great. It's nice to have just a very little bit of velocity just to add that soft thump. You will be needing to wear headphones to hear this. go furry. Maybe I'll do that again, because they knew what they were doing. Wow. The thing that you find just messing around with the DFAM is there are so many sweet spots. There's so many little moments that are possible once you move off of these presets where you're just like, oh my god, like must record at all times. It's a real must record synth. It's very dangerous to jam with this thing without a recorder set up to it. Because there's nothing more disheartening than coming across something amazing and not having the means to record it. And I think you can hopefully hear it just has an innately storming tone. Moog are known for making just gorgeous sounding instruments. And I think it's very much self-evident. The circuits sound great. They just sound damn great. And they're really well tuned and finessed. So they sound great together as an ensemble. You see, I'm starting to get a little bit carried away. This is just like... It's just, I don't know, it's techno basically, for techno music, but you know, any other style, take these elements and pare them down and make them maybe less aggressive than I'm doing here. It's more than capable of doing it, but personally speaking, for kind of a certain style of like just gorgeous sort of purely electronic music that can explore the boundaries between, you know, drums and bass, I mean, this thing is just a gift. It's just an absolute gift. It's genius. It really is. Ooh. Oh. Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes. Here we're going to play around with something sort of non-drummy, which is the Tubular Bells preset, just to kind of illustrate some other kinds of tones. And I've got a bit of kind of spring reverb applied to this sound as well. We can soften that. It's interesting, all the kind of FM tones possible. And by varying the pitch and velocity, you just completely change the sequence. In fact, the pitch is super, like, responsive. Because there's such interaction between the oscillators, because they're being FM'd against each other. So it becomes really important, like literally just a hair's difference on the pitch. It's a little bit like adjusting the temperature dial on your shower. Now the envelope generator to VCO amounts are zeroed, so there's no effect, but you can get kind of drummy things if we introduce those. Now there is a switch to control the attack of the VCA, of the volume. It was set to slow to take the click out, but you can put it in and it creates a harder hit. It's the only one of the 3 envelope generators the way you can adjust the VCA, the attack portion. Now we weren't hearing VCO1 at all. Now we are. And I could take the fur out and feed the white noise into the mixer as well. And instantly it takes on a tommy sort of drummy variety. I drop down the cutoff. That white noise kind of bites into the filter. It gives the filter something to work with. Delay. Should we add loads of delay? Of course we should. Of course we should add loads of delay. So, I mentioned that the DFAM would pair extremely well with a traditional drum machine. While that might sound counterintuitive, it's because if you pair it with a drum machine, you bring out its absolute strengths, which is its ability to create everything else. So, what I've got is the Roland TR8 here, and what I'm going to do is take the trigger out, and I just feed it into the clock, and then hit play. Bear with me. So you hear how the DFAM just supplies this extra groove, this pitched groove, while the trad drum machine takes care of trad drum machine things. One interesting patch that I was shown by Trent at Moog was using the pitch sequencer to control the amount of noise on a per step basis. So then this knob, which controls the amount of noise in the patch, gets controlled by the thing that is also controlling the pitch. And you do this by feeding pitch into noise level. So then high pitches also have high noise content. There's a kind of funny interrelationship. And then you have the fun of sequencing this with an irregular trigger pattern, which is what I'm doing on this pattern. So it's sending an irregular gate pattern into the DFAM. Look. See what I mean about it blending really well with another drum machine? Let the drum machine do what drum machines are good at. Let a DFAM do what a DFAM can do. Let a DFAM do what only a DFAM can do. Ouch. So here we go with a Mother 32 and a DFAM together. They become like this little Moog groove box, which is pretty sweet. So if I turn this up, you can hear I've got a little jam. And then if I start the DFAM, sounds nice with that LFO kind of modulating the Mother's filter. Now this is obviously where it starts to get very fun, because that means I could use that LFO on the DFAM. So if I take the triangle output of the LFO and feed it into the VCA decay, then that happens. That parameter is controlling two things at once in two different machines. program this, there's almost a little just because there's a tiny little ghost of a snare here. And then I could use the modulation sources in the mother, like the LFO, triangle LFO. I can shift the pattern on the mother, change the down note. That weird acid sound is because you feed the filter back out into itself. Creates a really cool. Wow. Nice. So I dearly trust that you understand why I am so excited about the DFAM and what I was banging on about when I said that this thing is truly a unique beast. It's not your traditional subtractive synthesis patch, even though it can be used in a traditional synthesis, subtractive synthesis kind of way. You can use this as a voice, and we could use it as an expander and increase our moginess. But I think where it absolutely excels, personally speaking, is as this device for just coming up with strange, pure electronic tones, things that just, are what synthesizers do so well. Strange, otherworldly tones that we don't really have names for. And that in the context of, being combined with the drum machine, with the delay pedals, with other actual melodic elements, a DFAM can be this kind of driving backbone, this just creating all manner of interesting, strange, percussive elements, but that also cross over into this completely, this uncanny valley of things that are not drums and are not lead lines. They're this beautiful hybrid. It's something that modular synthesizers do really well, and it's something that the DFAM does exceptionally well. So that is the Moog DFAM. Thanks.